Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marissa Paglino, and I did some research on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I'll just be talking a little bit about this human motivation theory, what it looks like, and how we can apply it to our different spheres of influence. So before we talk about the hierarchy of needs as a theory itself, let's talk a little bit about who Abraham Maslow was. So Abraham Maslow, he was born in 1908, really just to kind of set the scene of where this came up. Again, it was during World War II, so that was a lot of the driving force behind this work. Abraham Maslow was an American psychologist. He studied behaviorism specifically, and in studying human behaviorism, experiencing the trauma of World War II, he began studying self-actualization. So we'll get a little bit more into what self-actualization means, what it looks like, and how people can achieve it. But then he developed the hierarchy of needs in 1940. So what is the hierarchy of needs? Really, in a few words, the hierarchy of needs is that different needs drive humans, and that once the more basic needs are met, people become driven by more complex needs. So I'll show you an image in a second, but it's more of a pyramid, right? So the first level is, let's say, just basics. So you'll see at the 5 stages of motivation. The first level is what's known as physiological. The second level is safety. The next level is love. Then we have esteem, and then we have self-actualization. So what does this mean? How can we apply it? And really what it means is that all people are driven by the same thing, right? So regardless of their socioeconomic status, their race, their culture, their background, what city they live in, what job they have, it really states that these needs are generalizable. So they can be applied to all people, regardless of age or income. So here's a nice visual of which stage, right, exists and what the needs are. So again, this is very simplified because it was established in 1940. And since 1940, a lot of it has developed. Researchers have challenged really the order of this. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But to start, we start with physiological needs, right? So this is the basics. So air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction, the ability to reproduce. These are the needs that really just achieve the goal of homeostasis. So homeostasis meaning that the human body can function in a place where it is physically stable. So in each stage, right, so each stage of need has to be met for an extended period of time until the human or the person is able to step into that next stage. So for example, right, if you have a man on the street who is experiencing homelessness, their first need is shelter. They're not necessarily worried about security, right? They're not necessarily worried about developing relationships, or that's not their top priority. But their first priority, again, according to Maslow, and I'll talk a little bit about how this theory has developed over the years, according to other researchers, but according to Maslow, right, they are unable to achieve anything else. They are only solely driven by the need for shelter, sleep, clothing, food, and so on, right? So if you want to motivate a man to get a job, let's say again, if we have a man who is experiencing homelessness, they will most likely be motivated to go and be in a workplace before they have their basic physiological needs met. So again, once the physiological needs have been met for an extended period of time, so just the basic operation for human stability, then the person will move into the need for safety, or needing the need for safety. So when we talk about safety, this means personal security, so having things like locks on your doors, right? Employment, a steady income, job security, consistent resources, right? Knowing where your next meal is going to come from, physical health, emotional health, mental health, right? And property, a place to call home. Once these needs are met, again, for an extended period of time, then it moves into love and belonging. So once you go from the more basic and physical needs, from physiological and safety, then the next 3 are more ethereal, right? So they're more psychological and less physiological. So we go into love and belonging. So this means having relationships with friends, having intimacy with other people, family, again, sense of connection, really just a place where they can feel belonging and needed, right? I've heard a quote before. I cannot remember who said it for the life of me. But one thing that our church says a lot actually is that there is this need to be needed and to be known, right? And that's where that love and belonging comes into place. So again, love and belonging, this can look very different for different people, but again, that need is still there. Then we move into esteem. So once you feel a place where you are loved by others and you belong in a certain place, then you move into esteem. So just being in a place, you're dissatisfied, right? Until you reach this esteem need, right? So you are respected where you are. You have self-esteem. You have status. So maybe that's a title, right? Or maybe that has a management position, or maybe somewhere where the person is overseeing something or developing or challenging themselves. Recognition, strength, and freedom, these all fall under that esteem category. So then once esteem, love and belonging, safety needs, and physiological needs have been met, then we're talking about self-actualization. So in summary, right, self-actualization is not perfection, but what it is maximizing who the person is, right? That means that they're healthy. That means they're able to do everything that it is that they're capable of doing. So I think of it like this. Let's talk about Usain Bolt for a second. If you're not familiar with Usain Bolt, he is a world-renowned track runner. He is, I think, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, please, in our discussion forum. But Usain Bolt is, I'm not going to say he's the fastest man in the world, but he is definitely one of the fastest men in the world. He is at this stage where he has reached self-actualization, right? He is excellent at what he does. He is a track superstar. He's won multiple Olympic gold medals. He is widely considered to be the best, right? So obviously, when we're talking about workplace and organizational leadership and things that we experience in our day-to-day, we're not always talking about Olympic athletes, but self-actualization looks different for different people. So that's why I personally really like the hierarchy of needs, because it is very general, right? It's something that can be put across all people regardless of where they are. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about what some of the other researchers have challenged, again, in his theory since 1940. While this is a great framework, they do talk a little bit more about how it's not necessarily steps, like a staircase or like a pyramid, as we see here, but rather more of spheres that overlap with each other. So again, for example, you can have a person who has safety and physiological needs. They have their safety and physiological needs are met, right? They have a house, they feel safe in their house, they have job security, and then, you know what, they have healthy self-esteem, right? Like they have respect for others, they respect for themselves, they have a healthy sense of self-esteem, they're recognized in their job and their work. But let's say that they don't necessarily they're missing an intimacy piece in their love and belonging, and that need is not necessarily being met. So researchers do challenge that a lot of this stuff does really overlap, and it's not necessarily stairs, like Maslow is kind of theorizing here. But it is important to note that all of these are important. However, there was another article that I read, and I mentioned in the paper that I submitted, that another way to look at this pyramid is kind of which needs are the most important rather than steps, right? And I really liked that approach to it, because if you think way back, I guess the 90s, or maybe the early 2000s, I guess the 90s really, the food pyramid, right? How we said you need to eat so many grains and you need to eat so many fats and so many sweets and this much protein and whatever. That's kind of how I look at this. And that's actually really helpful to think about when you're looking at others, especially in a leadership role, right? So when we're leading organizations, how can we make sure that these individuals' needs are being met? And as leaders, what resources are we providing for our staff that achieve all of these needs? So love and belonging, are we creating a culture that says, okay, you belong here, we want you here, everyone has a space here, right? Are we creating opportunities for individuals to receive respect, right? Are we providing opportunities for recognition? Are we empowering people in their strength? Basically, all of esteem through physiological, while, it's not necessarily the organization's role to provide all of the physiological needs for their employees. However, it is important to provide some sort of physiological needs. So a space, right? So an office that's reasonable. You're not sitting on top of each other. A comfortable working environment. A place where you feel safe, right? You have job security. You're not always panicking about, am I going to get fired the next day? Things like that. So as leaders, how can we reach all of these needs? What are some systems and things that we can establish within our organizations to meet these needs, regardless of the individual, so that they can achieve self-actualization? And my belief is that when we as employers or as leaders, we can meet all of the needs of our stakeholders, so not even just employees, right? Those that we serve, the people who are investing in our company. As we can meet those needs, we can all reach that stage of self-actualization and continue operating in a place of health. So here are the references if you want to check out some more articles or you're really interested in the hierarchy of needs, go for it. But that was a really quick summary on the hierarchy of needs, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.